Hello, everyone. I'm Simran. Welcome to a very special episode of Unmasked with a guest that I deeply admire, somebody who's taken a very pivotal journey from silicon chips to sacred consciousness, who's influenced me a lot as I think about preventive health and well being. He's the CEO of the Chopra Foundation. He's the co-founder of the next gen agentic AI company, Cyberhuman.AI. He's launched numerous initiatives at the intersection of health and technology, such as Peak Health, Seva.Love, and so many more that I cannot even remember. But I'm very excited to welcome Poonacha Machaiah to this podcast.
Simran, I'm really excited. I think there's a lot of things you mentioned, but I'm really excited to be on this podcast with you to explore all the different topics about what makes people joyful and meaning, purpose, and more importantly, well-being. So, you know what? I was looking forward to this conversation. So let's see what unfolds.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I know that you have a very busy week in New York, so I'm deeply grateful for the
No, I
time.
always make time, always have time, never busy.
Absolutely. Infinite possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I always like to do a ritual before we dive deep. I invite you to take a breath with me and we breathe into our heart and we'll open our heart so that we can have a heartfelt conversation. All right, so let's breathe in together. Thank you. So I want to start, Poonacha, with your roots. I would love for you to paint a picture. If you were to close your eyes and go back to your childhood, tell us more about where you grew up, what was it like, and how has it influenced you and your journey?
Yeah, so I'm originally, I think I grew up in city Bangalore, which is called the Silicon Valley of India, but my roots are about 4 hours away from Bangalore. You know, it's in a place called Kodagu, or the British used to call it Coorg. And it's called the Western Ghats, which is an amazing part of India. It's also, the region is called the Scotland of India, one, because it's truly beautiful. It is where the tigers roam. And it is also the home of one of the most diverse flora and fauna. And it's very special because I think from me and from Kodagu or Coorg, we are the last of the Mohicans, I say that, because we are an indigenous tribe continuously inhabiting the land. And we were kind of the warriors, you know, you're from the north. I would say, if you're the Sardar, I'm the Sardar of the south. And so we were kind of, I would say most of us were in Indian Armed Forces or, you know, worked in the paramilitary and kind of dedicated themselves to service. So I love my family and my traditions because it is all about chivalry, courage, and honor. And honor is a word we don't hear a lot about these days. But I grew up in a household where the most important thing was honor, and the most important thing was service. And I think if I echo back, I think, you know, if you look at from your tradition, being the Sikh, it is Seva, Sangha, and Simran, right? You have Seva, you have Sangha, and the pursuit of higher consciousness, Simran. And I think very similarly for us, it is very much about, you know, really being of service, cultivating honor. So this is kind of my upbringing. And I think as I reflect back, I'm 55 now, I'm getting even more connected back to my land because there was a lot of very rich tradition of protecting nature, conserving of forests, and consuming less, right? I think the challenges we've always talked in the modern society is overconsumption. And we've always lived within nature and understanding the balance of nature. So that's kind of my upbringing. So that's really my, you know, my tribe or my tradition. And that's why I say we're the last of the Mohicans, because we are less than 100,000 of us in the world today. We worship nature, the river Kaveri, and nature. And as Rumi would say, God's language is silence. Everything else is poor translation. I would say nature and silence is God's language. And so we grew up very much in harmony, in sync with nature.
Absolutely. And I really relate to that. I love Coorg. I've been there once with my family. I still remember the rainforest and the coffee, and it was just completely magical. Very similar to like last month when I was in Costa Rica. I was thinking of the similarity between some of those ancient tribal cultures too, because that's what they do. They worship the land, it's sacred. They believe in community. And I'd love to hear a little bit about, when you were sort of going through your journey of like being a tech leader, of having worked in Motorola and, Nortel and all these big tech giants, being in the US, being in the top. Was there a time that you kind of wanted to go back to your roots to sort of rediscover yourself? Because for me, I had kind of forgotten when I moved to the US 13 years ago. I was just so caught up in the hustle culture and let's go to school for public health and go to biotech. And then 3 years ago, when I was like at the top of my career, but completely empty inside, I went back to the Golden Temple and I saw the Miri Piri. I saw the inner and the outer world connection. I saw and learned the saint soldier, and that was an aha moment for me. And I remember that time when my grandfather was like, what you just said, Seva, volunteer, Sangat or Sangha or community, and Simran. And I was like, I'm not doing that much Seva. Yes, I am working in oncology and heart disease, but like, what more can I do? I don't have a community here. I have coworkers, but I'm deeply lonely. And then I'm Simran, but I don't even know who I am. And I had to rediscover myself and go to that route of who am I. So I'd love to hear about how you took that journey, rediscovering your roots and then weaving them into your life.
I think when I left India in 92, I don't think I was, I really left pretty angry because I didn't really agree with a lot of the systems. I didn't believe in the reservation system. It didn't matter. You basically got backward community, backward tribe. It basically doesn't matter what grade you got admission based on which community you were in. So I was kind of really, and I was an athlete and it didn't matter how good I was. It mostly mattered who I knew. So there were a lot of different things I was angry about when I left the country when I was 20, 21 years old. And I think, but as I grew up, as I got older, I think I really kind of started understanding a lot more about community. I think what I love about the United States is the ability for you to be an individual contributor. It actually rewards you for being that, right? You have the most valuable player. It actually rewards you for your ambition. But then as I became an entrepreneur and I started leading, I realized life is a team sport. You cannot do it alone, right? You cannot do anything alone. Like I said, when you're born, somebody, delivers you and gives you a bath. And when you die, somebody embalms you and puts you to your next journey. And somewhere in between, you think you can do it all alone. And I was really kind of fascinated with really bringing community. And what I found that India provided to me was a sense of community. And I really wanted to understand that more. And in Eastern wisdom tradition, we have 4 stages of life, right? The first 25 is education. The second 25 is fame and fortune. The third 25, be of service. And the last chapter, the fourth 25, is about who am I? Transcendence, enlightenment, awareness, whatever you want to call it. So for me, I think there's somewhere in between. I wanted to really understand the inherent culture which I came up in, which was all about community, and also a very rich tradition and heritage which I had kind of forgotten, right? And we had all the Vedas and the Natya Shastra, the Yoga Sutras, and there was so much of amazing body of work which I had not read. So I would say I was really fascinated with outer space, and then somewhere there was a fascination to inner space. And I realized you can spend a lot of time understanding outer space, but the tragedy would be that you didn't understand the who am I. And that really got me into really the exploration and journey.
Wonderful. And tell us a little bit about, your journey to becoming a tech leader first. You moved to the US, you were this amazing robotics, AI person back in the day when we didn't even know what AI was. You pretty much rose to your top pretty early in life. How did that feel? And, what did it cost you? Because I think from the outside, we see the shiny, the glamorous things, but it comes with sacrifice, with trade-offs. So share a little bit about that.
I was very lucky. I think earlier on, like I said, I was at Sprint, and I was then with, exited one of the companies called Dimension Enterprises with Mike Fitzgerald, who was basically the founder, to Nortel. I became a vice president of Nortel at a very young age. And I started asking the questions, did I climb the wrong mountain? I really wasn't happy. I thought I would be very happy when I became an executive at a Fortune 100 company, but I realized that really didn't make me happy. And I was in Virginia, Vienna, Virginia. That's when I kind of volunteered to join the local fire department, Station 2. And I really started looking at life, death, right? Mortality. And then I asked the question, like, once you die, what happens? Like, all of a sudden, like, something could happen and you're done and you're kind of, what does life even mean? So this kind of attachment to this net worth, which is kind of a fascination for people. People are really attached to the outcome of net worth. And at that time, I started reading Krishnamurti. And in a book he had called Truth is a Pathless Land, he said something like, comparison and conformity lead to conflict. A mind without conflict is a spiritual mind. And I realized that that was what was going on. I was always comparing, what is my bank balance? What is my title? What is somebody else's title? I'm an Indian, so I should do this, I should do that. And it's never ending. So I wanted to kind of break that cycle about not being attached to the label. I think we get so attached to the labels, so who am I? I can be like, I'm Poonacha Machaiah, I'm Indian, I'm a male, I'm from Coorg. And then you're kind of screwed for the rest of your life because you're defending this very fictional identity. What we are and who we are infinite possibilities. And I think that's what I wanted to kind of explore, not being defined by a societally conditioned, I would say, kind of a robot, right? So what happens is that we become kind of this, society kind of conforms us into who we are. I really didn't want to be that. I started really asking these questions and saying, what, maybe I need to kind of move from being a technologist and working with Fortune 100 companies and Nortel and Motorola and all of that to really becoming a social entrepreneur using tech for good. And that really started my, my journey into looking at tech. Even one of my companies, early companies I co-founded along with Shekhar Kapur and A.R. Rahman was a company called Q. And QK was, just was a company which started actually, and Shekhar's vision was to bring India together with song and dance. And obviously Shekhar, legend in Hollywood, Rahman, once again a legend, the maestro, the Mozart of India. And we said, everybody has a dream and music, maybe music and dance connects all of us. And that was one of the early visions, which I was very happy to be part of. And that kind of really started my journey into looking at well-being.
Yeah.
And around that same time, I actually met Deepak through Shekhar. When I really met him, he said, I want to reach 1 billion people for a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world. And that started our journey over decades now, really trying to bring together people because I realized mental health is a big crisis. We talk about it every day. Like every 40 seconds, we lose someone to suicide globally. That is the silent pandemic.
Right.
We don't talk about it, but it's happening all the time. And what are we doing? I really started my trajectory to see if every 40 seconds we lose someone to suicide globally, there are not enough therapists, especially not in India. Then how do we kind of use technology? How can you use technology more consciously? How do I kind of use the talent I have, the skills I have, the network I have to really go back and really contribute towards societal transformation? So personal transformation, and societal transformation, eventually planetary transformation is kind of the mantra. And as part of the Chopra Foundation, with Deepak, we talk about it like joyful, energetic body, loving, compassionate heart, a reflective and alert mind, and lightness of being. And those are some of the things we want to kind of work towards every day. And that's kind of I would say, my journey now.
It's incredible. It's very inspiring. We definitely need more Punachas and more Deepaks in the world. And thank you for all you do. And I connect to that very deeply, right? Because I think I sort of took that same path of like, hey, I'm gonna, become a VP, I'm gonna co-found this company, and I expected to feel a certain way. And the pivotal moment for me when COVID hit, I was here, my parents were in India, I was just losing family members. There was this deep fear and uncertainty and not being able to see people that you love, like that just sort of shook me. And my mental health was really bad. I didn't want to admit it. I think as Indians, even though I come from a family of psychologists, I didn't want to go to a therapist and talk about my problems. But that unraveling, that taking me up into like, what am I really here for you, was that one pivotal moment, or was it a series of events? Because very few people, Punacha, take the courage. It's an uncharted territory We know there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but we don't know how soon we'll get there. And it's never a straight line, and it's a tough road. And like, it comes with ups and downs. You were a leader in the tech world, and then you are a leader in the consciousness and the well-being world. You're bringing both of them together. You're at the forefront. Very few people get there, but I'm sure that when you were having that, what is this? Like, I'm not happy. It must have felt daunting.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes. I mean, everybody has like this thing about, I'm walking away from huge packages and security and, expat jobs and all the things which sound really good. But, for me, I know the word honor is very important. And my dad always, when I left India, he told me, it doesn't matter what you do, never lose your honor. So be the best you can be in whatever you do. So for me, I take great pride that, I want to be of service. I think service makes me the happiest. I don't get very excited about a bank balance or, or things. Money is very important. You got to be in this world, but not off this world. And I feel like, in one generation or two generations, nobody's going to know who you are. So why do we take ourselves that seriously? And if I ask most people who are listening, do they know who their great grandfather is? Probably not. But if they, imagine two generations, they've forgotten. So I think the only thing we remember is that what do you do today? So really this concept of present moment awareness. What can I do now to make myself and the world around me better? Resilience is very much a part of my motto. I'm in St. Joseph's Boys High School, Bangalore, very esteemed institution. And the motto of the school was Fidet Labore, which means faith and toil. So I think these were principles which were inculcated very young. Growing up in India, you hear about Mother Teresa and the amount of impact she had, and leprosy was. So I think there was always this part of me which says anything I do has to have a higher purpose. We talk about the four principles, what is very important, which is about authenticity, integrity, higher purpose, and cause in the matter. I think those are the four non-negotiables which I think are very important for every person. You got to have authenticity, you got to have integrity, you got to have higher purpose, and everything you do, cause in the matter, you got to take responsibility. Yes, it is very hard sometimes to walk away because everything feels so comfortable and you're kind of climbing the ladder and all of that. But I think the fundamental questions we all have to ask the soul, like I always say, the LinkedIn profile versus the soul profile. I can go back and find your LinkedIn profile, but your soul profile, who am I? What do I want? What is my purpose? And what am I grateful for? I think these are questions we got to ask every day. Because I
Yeah,
think these are questions return you to wholeness, right? Asking these questions is more like recalibrating you. And
right.
that has become part of my own practice. And that's really, I think the transition point, answer to your question, it wasn't one day in the morning I woke up and then suddenly this thing happened. Wasn't that. There were incidences through my life which kind of calibrated me. And people, like I said, I stand on the shoulder of giants. People came into my life and they've enriched me. And I remember I was actually on a motorcycle trip from Chandigarh all the way to, to Leh Ladakh, and, typical motorcycle that the Royal Enfield was riding. And along the way, I went to a monastery, talking to a monk. I think this was in Tikse Monastery. I was asking about questions in life, and, he looked at one of the quotes and said, I think that's what you're looking for. And there was a sign which said, that which you add every day creates knowledge, and that which you subtract every day creates wisdom. And the
Say that
movement for
again and explain it for anybody.
Yeah, I think maybe it was attributed to Lazu, which basically said that which you add every day creates knowledge. That which you subtract every day creates wisdom. And so what you realize is that every day we would about adding, I want to read a new book, I want to listen to a new podcast, I want to do this, I want to do that. That gives you more knowledge, not necessarily wisdom. Wisdom requires you to subtract, right? It's easy to add a t-shirt to your closet. Try to remove a t-shirt and give it away. You'll be like, no, I think I'm going to wear it next summer. It's very hard. So for me, I looked at life as simplification, right? And it's about really what do you need to simplify? And that I think is also a big part of what I started doing was simplification. And I think that's one of the things I think has an instrumental part of how I even look at life these days about what can I simplify, right? Not what I can add. I think adding is, and I think though as a society, we're constantly in this need to be adding, right? And I think so. I mean, that really, that kind of started my journey towards what is that archetype. If you talk about from your tradition, it's Sant Sipahi,
Yeah. And we'll
which is
come
the,
to that. We'll come
yeah,
to
which is
that.
the warrior monk, right? So
Yes.
that really became the nexus, or the starting point of how I started thinking about it.
Yeah. So I want to highlight from what you mentioned is we need to stop taking ourselves and the external things so seriously. Our life is between the first breath that we take when we're born and then the last breath, and then we're gone. We don't come with anything, we don't take anything, and we gotta find that soul profile of who am I? What am I here for? What am I grateful for? My purpose. Again, very can seem very daunting to somebody who is doing very well externally, feeling empty, reaching midlife and kind of thinking about what's next. So, what were some of the things that you did to find that, get to that warrior monk identity? What were some of the tactical things? Because that's what you've done, Punacha, with peak living, with cyberhuman. This is this concept of infinity and you know consciousness and purpose, and I'm going to put structure and I'm going to put execution to it. But then when you started, what were the things that you did?
I just explored. I played, right? So, like I said, I wanted to understand what extreme spirituality was, and how do people walk on fire, walk on glass, get the tattoos. So I spent just exploring. I learned that, only through exploration. I'm kind of a karma yogi. I kind
Mm,
of learn by doing and by exploring, by feeling, by being embodied, not by being in the head, right? So there's jnana yoga, there's bhakti yoga, there's karma yoga. I'm a karma yogi. I like to go be in the world and experiment and feel. So I learned, I traveled across India. I traveled globally. I really wanted to understand what is Vipassana. I went to Myanmar. I've traveled across, to Japan to understand what do they do there, and China, and in Europe. I think for me, just kind of creating, going traveling all over, asking questions, and then making it my own. So, like I said, truth is a pathless land. It's not about following somebody or trying to follow anything. For me, it's not about this or that. You got to find this and that and make it your own. So I always joke, I always say eat lightly, drink moderately, exercise regularly, and love excessively. Love is the only thing you can do in excess. Everything else has moderation and expiration dates. But these are kind of things I've learned to create my own pitch book or my own narrative. But most important thing is by playing, right? And only by exploring, I went and met many gurus, and I went and met many mystics, and I went and, I went and explored psychedelics, and through all of it, I basically said, what works for me? What works for me? What works for me is I like nature. Nature returns me to wholeness. I love solitude and solace. When I'm depleted, when I'm doing this, I like to kind of go all out, but then I go back and I pull back and I say, how do I find through nature and silence, find my own compass? I spent many years, and I still continue every year to do one or two things which scares the hell out of me. As we get older, Yoga Vasishta said infinite flexibility is the key to immortality. Flexibility of the body mind, right? Children are infinitely flexible. They're putting their toes in their mouth and they're moving around. I think when we get older, we become very inflexible in the mind and the body. So constantly challenging yourself, constantly having novelty in your life, increasing your ability to have, I would say, cognitive reserve, right? By doing things which stretch you. Those are
mhm.
things I've kind of made it kind of my practice now, right?
No, that's incredible and sort of very similar to me that, as a pharmacist, when I was trying to find myself,
Yeah,
psychedelics and, obviously nature and going to
right.
Kutu and hiking and sort of disconnecting to reconnect with oneself. And that's how I discovered breathwork. And then I went and, worked with different breathwork teachers. I got to find my own technique and using sound vibrations. And I just fell in love with it so much because it allowed me to shut off that prefrontal cortex or almost down regulate it. Because I think in the modern society, we spend way too much time being stuck in our head and
Right.
not allowing our heart to open at all. even as women, like we've forgotten how to receive, we've forgotten how to step into and enjoy our femininity. And that's what breath work and meditation did to me, is that it sort of grounded me, it aligned me, and I realized the importance of opening my heart.
Yeah, it's beautiful because then now you're sharing with the world, right? So I think every person born has a superpower, right?
Hmm.
When you were born, you were kind of localized from the non-local to become Simran. And the only reason to be alive is to explore the reason why you were born.
Right.
And that's really what it is. I think every school should not just be teaching you STEM and STEAM and all of that, but also to find the superpower in every child. Because every child born is, there's a saying which says, every child born is proof that God hasn't given up on humanity. But we take an amazing child and you say, okay, you should be a doctor, engineer, lawyer, or whatever, but still we should find their superpower.
Yeah.
And I think all of us have superpowers. And I think that's really should be the reason to be alive, is to find that. That's really what gives me purpose. When I listen to you with what you're doing to champion women and to bring mental health, and it's a really important aspect, because one of the things I can generalize being from India, that we're not very good about externalizing our internal feelings. But we didn't have to do it, because when you're growing up in India, you're kind of surrounded by people. Whether you like it or not, you're constantly, everything internal is external, right? So we didn't need a therapist. Why would you need a therapist when you're living in a joint family? Everybody's your therapist, right? So it worked when we all lived in the farm and you were all together. But today we do not have that. So what's happened
Hmm.
is that the structures which kept us very safe have now the deep migration in Punjab. It's like everybody's moving into Delhi or this or that. So nobody is there in the villages anymore. So now that structure broke. And so now we need new tools. And I think this is where the work, I also understand these new modalities, old modalities with a new way of implementing it.
With a new lens. Like, I think that we have so much wisdom. As a pharmacist, what fascinated me was like these breathing techniques were invented 5, 6,000 years ago, and they were essentially used by mystics, but also warriors, to get into an altered state, to self heal, to manifest. And somewhere along the line, the only part of yoga that we have integrated are the asanas. But we've
Right.
forgotten the most fundamental and foundational piece of yoga. But then also, what does it mean to be in community? What does it mean to commune with nature, to connect with things larger than ourselves? So I see with Tattva, I see this potential of, similar to what you're building, bringing in tech, bringing in science into ancient wisdom. So every time we do a workshop, we give people an EEG device and we show them how they're moving from high beta waves to alpha, but then also theta and delta, waves that you never access in your waking state, and allowing them to experience that flow state and almost teaching them how to get there. So we're just breathing, we're not doing anything but teaching people for whom meditation is not fun or daunting. And similar to what you're doing with peak living, you're adding that element of science and technology.
I mean, I think flow is a very important thing, right? So people living in a flow state, and always flow is about feeling selfless, timeless, effortless, and richness of experience. And you can achieve flow states by doing breath work, by dancing, by
Yeah.
going to nature. Anytime when time stands still and you feel you're in a state of flow. And I think today we're very much in a fight flight response, because you're
Yes.
very reactive. And I think for us to shift the narrative, right? So we are constantly, you know, to be, you're constantly being rushed. I always tell people, when you're being rushed, meditate. When you want revenge, forgive, right? And when you're in a chaotic space, find stillness. So I think we have to find these modes which kind of return you back to wholeness. And these are things we don't talk about because you don't go to school for this anymore. I think we go to school to basically business, right? And business, what do we learn? Defeat, decimate, destroy. SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunity, threats. We are kind of always looking at life through a lens of scarcity. I think we have to look at life through the lens of abundance. There is
Mm.
abundance consciousness, not scarcity consciousness. And this is where I think the world, when talk about feminine versus masculine, the feminine archetype is about caring, sharing, abundance. Then the masculine is all about defeat, decimate, destroy. There was a time for that, but now there's enough in the world for every man's need. Greed is killing the world. So I think if we go from the lens of abundance, then I think we would not be doing what we're doing in the world today, which is really tragic.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think the first step for somebody who's in a corporate role and, who's working very hard and successful is what you mentioned, is learning how to regulate your nervous system.
Right.
When I work with these Fortune 100 CEOs and they come to me and, women come to me and they're in midlife and perimenopausal and menopausal, I'm like, we have forgotten how to regulate our nervous system. We need to get out of that fight or flight, and it's easy. It's not as hard as we think it is. It only takes a few minutes, but we kind of have to shift our mindset for it and be
Yeah, I
open.
mean, if you forget how to breathe, you're really screwed. So, so I think we really should focus on breath, you know. It's probably the fastest way to return you to parasympathetic. Simra, this is where I think the work you're doing is really important today, because so many people think that you need to have do something very complex, right? It is the small things in life, right, which really give you the biggest results. But I think most people think of yoga as six-pack abs. Hardly do you see any yogi in India with six-pack, right? It's more about union of the body-mind. I
Right.
think that's an important aspect of really connecting with yourself. It's very interesting because, I think as you knew, about 12 days ago, I had a severe attack of Bell's palsy, and I was really thought my right side of my face was paralyzed. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be speaking for a long time on camera. I was really like, uh, I was very conscious, right? Because when you were kind
Yeah.
of, it's pretty scary. What I did was really kind of focused on mind body. I really spoke to myself. And I
Mm.
think, and I look back in about 10 days, I made a recovery. But really going back to the fundamental roots, which was reducing inflammation, activating the parasympathetic, and really letting the body give it the space for it can heal itself. And I think we are living in a very amazing time in human history. So even though there's doom and gloom, but there's also, I think we are one of the most amazing times technology to leverage it for good.
Thank you for sharing that. And I was really worried about you, and I'm so glad that you're feeling better. And that's sort of the perfect segue into the warrior monk within you. And I recently found this. So
Huh.
I would love to hear the warrior monk story, how you found that warrior monk, and also learn more about this wonderful book.
But that
I've
was
been
basically
reading that.
That was a book. Was during the pandemic, and a person who worked very closely with Patricia Hacker. And I think the thing was during the pandemic, we realized that everything was going digital, and kids were not playing, and the kids were not able to kind of go out of the house. I thought it was the worst time in human history. Even during the worst wars, we were able to hug each other and touch each other, and all of a sudden they're all going to be isolated and given an iPad or a book. We said, why don't we print some books and just give it away to kids? But then also, I was very fascinated with resilience because, even though people are going through the very dark times in their life, I always said I kind of believe in the ABC principle. A is an attitude of gratitude. The glass is half empty or half full. B is believe in impermanence. This too shall pass. Even though today might be the deepest, darkest winter of your life, there is spring and summer. And C is make a conscious choice. Choose love any given point of time. So I always wanted to kind of say, like, maybe I wanted the archetype to be somebody who was brown. So it was basically, I want to be an Indian. Why only like different superheroes? And then I wanted to show, like, even if you're like an ant, you can carry 10 times your body weight, right? So it doesn't matter how small you are. It's not about the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog, right? It's about what is your spirit. And I wanted people to embody the spirit. And then the warrior monk was kind of, being a warrior. I also realized that the times are different. People think a warrior fights with the sword. Yes, but that's not the only way a warrior fights. The modern warrior, what I call the spiritual warrior, fights using the light of awareness. And their shield is compassion, and the blade is truth, right? So we have the narrative of the warrior is very different. So the world I imagine, the warrior monk, is because the warrior always helps the helpless, and the monk provides hope to the hopeless. And a world where no one is helpless or hopeless is a world I imagine, right? So that to me My time has come, and when I'm in my last exit, I want to be able to imagine a world where no one is helpless or hopeless. And that's the world I work towards, right? And that to me is really why the warrior monk. How does the warrior monk train? Like I said, when the world rushes you, you meditate. When you seek revenge, you forgive. And when there's chaos, you find stillness. And the victory of the warrior monk is walking through life unarmed, yet unstoppable.
Mm,
That to me is the warrior monk.
mhm. Yeah, it's beautiful and it's so deeply inspirational, right? And very much tied to the identity that I was building towards of the saint soldier and the Khalsa and, the spirituality and finding your inner world being plugged in and yet operating in the external world. Because that, as I'm not a religious person, but I think I deeply connect to the principles of Sikhism. And one of the key principles is that you don't just give up on external world. You just don't go in the Himalayas and become a monk and become a hippie and detach from the world. You live in the world, you influence the world, but you stay detached. Something very beautifully that you put is be in the world, but not
Yeah, I
of.
think Guru Gobind said, not even detached. Don't be attached to the outcome.
Right, right.
Being detached basically means I don't care. But don't be attached to the outcome. So discharge your duties, but don't be attached to the outcome, right? And that's kind of even said in many different ways. Because now I've tried it. I've wanted to basically go live in the ashrams and all of that, and I found that was kind of boring. The question is, how do you keep a state of mind when you're riding the subway, when you're in New York or in a business meeting? I think it's more about being very grounded wherever you are. It's easy to escape and run away and put on some clothing and no disrespect to anybody, but I don't believe you need a uniform. You could be whatever you are, but embody the principles of kindness, of compassion, of truth, of honor, right? I think the world is lost honor. And that's why I think we do things which, create a lot of trauma and hurt people.
Yeah, yeah. And now more than ever, won't you agree that it is very important for us, especially people in position of power and leadership roles, to awaken, to come back to wholeness, to find that grounding, to take that inner journey, and then to influence and transform other people, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. Deepak wrote a book called The Soul of Leadership, which I work with a lot of executives on. And the soul of leadership is focused around defining the new conscious leader. And its acronym is LEADERS, LEADERS. L is look and listen. Because look and listen with your body, mind, and spirit. Once you look and listen, E is emotionally bond. Connect
Mhm.
with your people. Google did a multi-year study called Project Aristotle, and they did what makes successful leaders or successful managers. It's not because they went to Berkeley or Stanford or Harvard. The most successful managers were managers who exhibited psychological safety. They connected with their teams. A is awareness, be aware as a leader. D is do and dream. The other E is empower. R is responsibility, and S synchronicity, magic happens. So this is a very different perspective looking at how do you create a conscious leader. And so it's not so much about coming up with a business strategy. We all went to business school for that, but that really has not made the world a better place. I think what it's done is create a lot of greed. And like I said, we don't have to have poverty, right? We don't need to have wars. We don't need to have disparity, right? Why are we doing it? Because we are not conscious. We're not aware of the decisions, and we think it's about me, it's not about we. One of the areas which I'm really focused on is looking at in the new world we're going with, how do we look at AI, well-being, leadership, and how do they all come together?
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. And I think you embody it so wonderfully that it's very inspirational to me, right? Even the first time that I met you at the biohacking conference, like I meet a lot of leaders, I meet a lot of people who are successful. I think what really touched me about our interaction was your presence. You didn't even know me, but I felt very safe, just like walking up to you, and you held that space for me. You really deeply listened to me. You were very present. You showed up fully. You were very gracious, and such few people do that. And I don't mean to stereotype, but specifically, men, they're like constantly looking at their watch. They're just like rushing, rushing, rushing. And I think for you really embody that sort of soulful leadership. So I'd love to understand why don't you think that more men are embodying that and opening up their heart and leading in a way that connects their mind and their heart?
I don't know if I can answer that question. For me, this has just been my own personal journey. I think for me, I'm always trying to see how can I be 1% better every day. And we talk about Aham Brahmasmi. God is you, you're God. And you're in the spirit, everything is there. And it's once again a work in progress. Not every day I get better, I make mistakes. But I think working with Deepak has been a big part of also my own journey. And one of the things he talks about love in action. Love without action is meaningless, and action without love is irrelevant. But love in action can change the world. And it's based on the 4 A's. The first A is attention, deep listening. And I realized that, when you're constantly on the phone or you're trying to be not doing justice to the person in front of you or to yourself, because you're kind of wasting each other's time. So you rather say, you know what, I can't talk to you right now. Let's just catch up another time. Or if you do decide to spend even 3 minutes, have deep attention. The second A is appreciation. Appreciate the uniqueness of that person, of that interaction. Work from a place of affection, love, kindness, tenderness, compassion. And the last A is radical acceptance. It's hard to change yourself. It's impossible to change anybody. So just accept. So when you actually kind of work on this attention, appreciation, affection, and acceptance, it actually flow. Then you don't. So every interaction is meaningful. Every conversation is meaningful. Because for me, I always say I outsource my day to the universe. And whatever happens is because the universe conspires. Because after that moment, it's never going to happen again. There'll be a different moment, but not that moment. So why screw it up? So I think that has been kind of my thing. Like, why be half-ass? Like, if you want to spend 5 minutes, spend a full all-in 5 minutes. I have two boys, who are 24 and 20. And as a male, and for them, I can't tell them what to do. I got to show them how I'm living my life. And maybe the way I live my life might be the way they learn, right? Because Maya Angelou said that people don't remember what you say, people don't remember what you do, but people never forget the way you make them feel. So making people feel is a lived experience, and people can smell bullshit a mile away, right? You can put on the best act, but everybody knows, right? So I think live it.
So much respect for both you and Dr. Deepak Chopra. And, it's just your humility is something that I really connect with and I want to embody, right? I think the fact that you and him, every time we see you guys, you're like, I'm a work in progress. It's a journey, I'm just like, okay, wow. It gives me a pause. I would love to hear about the different initiatives that you are working on with Dr. Chopra, Peak Living, and then in particular, Sages and Scientists. That's a really amazing novel symposium. So share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think so. Deepak and me have a company called Cyberhuman, which is tech and agentic AI. And Peak Living is an initiative because, everybody's talking about longevity and reverse aging and living forever. And we believe that joy is only measure of success. And it's once again, that's kind of the principle. But peak living is what I call the wisdom of age and the biology of youth. It's not about reverse aging. It's about aging with grace. You talk about your grandmother, your aunt, I think, who was 82 and is in Delhi and, living, and that aging is grace, right? And I think aging is something we need to embrace and embody. It's not about reverse aging. So that's a big part of peak living. Is how do you live our best self? Sages and Scientists is a symposium we really want to bring together. And this last year it was at Harvard, and this year it's going to be in West Palm Beach. And we bring in different people from all walks of life, right? A scientist, a sage talking about meditation and really kind of co-creating this community is going to be on December 5th through 7th. And so much of conferences is about talking to people or talking at people. For me, Sages and Scientists is about connection, community, and transformation. People come and they want to connect, they create a community, and then they kind of transform together. So it's very much like Seva, Sangha, Sadhana, Simran, right? I think it'll be like, those are the practices we embody, and I'm quite excited about that. And that's going to be an annual conference, which has been happening for years now.
That's amazing. That sounds incredible. And I would love to attend that.
Absolutely. It's in West Palm Beach, and yeah, we'd
I
love to
think
have you there.
So much magic can happen when you bring the right people together and you create that, sacred communion, and you open minds and bringing neuroscientists and mystics together. What do you hope that will come out of it?
The same thing which we've been trying for the last 2 decades, at least with Dr. Chopra. How do we create a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world? That's always been the case. And the theme of this year's conference is where technology evolves and humanity awakens. As technology evolves, and you know what, definitely we'll address every single disease out there. But then how do you awaken humanity? Otherwise, we will have medieval minds and modern capacity for warfare and destroy the planet. So as technology evolves, which it is already at a very rapid pace, humanity needs to awaken. And those are the conversations we need to have at Sages and Scientists so we can flourish as a civilization, not go the other way around. And that's what I'm excited about.
And what you mentioned about awakening together and using tech for good. We're doing an annual retreat for Tattva, which is we're doing a midlife awakening retreat. We're inviting 13 leaders, who are at experts in their fields and bringing them together in the hope that they'll connect with nature, they'll connect with themselves, and they'll awaken and they'll take some of that magic back into their families, into their teams, their communities, their organizations. And I know you and Dr. Deepak Chopra also do a ton of immersive events and retreats. What would you say to somebody who is like, I don't have time. I don't have time to attend these symposium, these retreats, and what's it gonna do for me?
I always tell people when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yes.
And sometimes a lot of people act from a space of insecurity, you know, also a space of arrogance, right? If you don't take time for yourself, then what's the point? If you don't take care of yourself, if you are not well, you can't take anybody, you can't take care of your team, you can't take care of your people. So I always say, as a leader, an organization takes the shape of its leader, right? If the leader is sick, the leader is not well, the rest of the organization is not well either, right? And the gut and the brain are connected by the 10th cranial nerve, the vagus nerve. Inflamed gut, inflamed brain, inflamed society, right? So if you're a leader and you're really struggling with your health, guess what? You're going to make bad decisions. Just the way it's going to be. And then, so it is very important when we look at well-being, the well-being of the leader, the well-being of the team. It's a waterfall effect. So I think the answer to your question would be well-being, personal well-being, societal well-being, then planetary well-being. But if you are not well, that's why we always say joyful, energetic body, loving, compassionate heart, reflective and alert mind, and lightness of being. If I had severe back pain, if I was sitting down here, I would be struggling every sentence. I would not be able to finish this conversation. Guess what? That's what most people are today. They have a back pain, they got this, they got that, they're on medication, and they're going to make bad decisions. So I would say the most important thing, but once again, similar, it's a very hard thing, right? Until they get sick, until they go to the doctor or they are in the ER, then they'll say, give me another chance. But why can't they start early? I always say water finds its own level. And when you have your right intention, attention, and then transformation, it starts with the intention, the sankalpa. If that intention is, you know what, I want to make a difference, then that's really all you need to do. And the right people will show up because they're supposed to be there.
Absolutely.
But think about it. I'm from Bangalore. You're from Delhi. We met in some biohacking conference, and then here we are having a podcast conversation. That's
Yeah.
magic,
And
right?
it is
But,
magic.
and so that's what it is. And I think, yeah, it's about finding the right intention.
Yeah.
Why do you want to do it? If it's got authenticity, if it's got integrity, it's got higher purpose, it will happen.
Absolutely. It's about being in the right vibration. It's about being in the right energy. And it's about more people realizing, especially in healthcare, our system is broken. It's a sick care system. We're constantly putting band-aids on top of our wounds, and we're not addressing the root cause. And we kind of have to shift that focus into making health about preventive well-being, about going deeper, about going back to our roots and the wholeness. And it's amazing to see all the work that you and Dr. Chopra are leading there and the trickle waterfall effect. So, Punacha, what does the warrior monk in you say now?
Pursue joy. What does it mean to be a spiritual warrior or a business person or somebody who's a CEO or somebody who's chasing their target? I always say be ruthless in achieving your goals, but always be kind. Be cunning in achieving your goals, but never cruel. Be patient in achieving your goals, but never negligent. Be sweet in achieving your goals, but never foolish. Life is on the razor's edge, right? You got to be in this world, but not off this world. And that's pretty much, the way I look at life.
Beautiful. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to share?
No, I think, I love this conversation, and I think I love what you're doing with Tattva and then creating community and Sangha, and you're living your Dharma. So I'm wishing you continued success, and I look forward to keeping up with your journey, and any way I can support, glad to be there. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Poonacha. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your mentorship. It's been such an honor getting to know you. It's been such an honor being inspired. And I would love to read the 3 ways to become a warrior monk because they've definitely helped me, resonated with me. And I think a lot of my audience will resonate with it. And then next time I see you, I'm bringing this with me and I want you to autograph it.
I totally forgot about it. That was actually, a project of the pandemic.
But it's amazing. The 3 ways to become a warrior monk. Number 1, never give up and trust in yourself. Anything is possible when you fully believe in yourself. That is being resilient. Number 2, if you have a problem, adapt to what is happening and come up with a positive solution. The solution is within you. That is being resilient. Number 3, recognize your own unique strengths and capabilities. Those are your superpowers. Take time to discover them. That is being resilient.
I almost had forgotten about it. So it's not bad, I think they're sticking to the written for children, but yeah, I think it's still relevant.
It's pretty powerful. I mean, don't say not bad. It's pretty powerful because literally, when I was having a tough day last week, I read that and I sat down with it, and then you have 3 points, empty spaces here on what makes you resilient today, and I have religiously been writing them down, and it's given me a lot of strength.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm so glad. I'm so grateful for this conversation. And once again, I really look forward to hearing more about your journey as as it unfolds. Thank you, Simran.